His wife sent killers to murder him. But a homeless girl destroyed his tyre and saved his life seconds before the ambush. What she revealed next exposed a secret that shattered his world forever. If this shocked you, like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping, true-style thrillers. John Okafor had everything a man could dream of. Power that could move markets, wealth that could buy islands, influence that could bend politicians, and respect that silenced rooms when he entered. His name alone opened doors across continents. In Lagos, Abuja, London, and Dubai, men stood when he walked in. Women lowered their voices. Deals paused. But inside the fortress of glass and marble he called home, John Okafor lived like a man surrounded by ghosts. Because peace, the one thing money could not purchase, had quietly abandoned him. It began on an ordinary Tuesday evening, the kind of evening that changes nothing until it changes everything. John had returned from a late meeting earlier than expected. The house was unusually quiet. His wife, Lillian, had taken little Sophia upstairs to put her to bed. The staff moved silently in the background, careful not to disturb their employer. He walked into Lillian's private sitting room, intending to retrieve a property file she had promised to send to him earlier that day. Lillian was meticulous about organization. Her drawers labeled, her documents color-coded, her world arranged with surgical precision. But when John opened the drawer she had mentioned, the file was not there. He frowned, not out of irritation, but curiosity. He began searching carefully, shifting documents, lifting envelopes, scanning each item with the practiced efficiency of a man who built empires by noticing details others missed. Then he found it. A slim book, a hardcover novel he had never seen Lillian read. Something about it felt out of place. John lifted it. As he did, a photograph slid out and fluttered onto the polished wood like a fallen leaf. He almost ignored it. Almost. But something made him bend down and pick it up. And in that single moment, the axis of his life tilted. The image showed Lillian, younger, softer, laughing in a way he had not seen in years. Her hair was loose, her eyes bright, her smile unguarded. She stood beside a man John had never seen before. Tall, handsome, casual confidence, the kind of man who didn't try to impress because he didn't need to. But it wasn't the man's face that made John's chest tighten. It was Lillian's hand, resting flat on the man's chest. Not politely, not distantly, intimately, possessively. The gesture of a woman who belonged there, the gesture of a woman who had once loved that spot more than anywhere else in the world. John felt a strange sensation crawl up his spine. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, something analytical. He turned the photograph over. A date was written in delicate feminine handwriting. 3 years ago. John's breath slowed. 3 years ago was not just another year. It was the year Sophia had been conceived. Silence swallowed the room. He stood there for a long time, staring at the numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into a different truth. But numbers don't lie, and neither did instinct. Something inside John, something ancient,
primal, deeply rooted in the traditions of his forefathers, snapped into place. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a door locking. Memories began rearranging themselves in his mind. Lillian's sudden solo trip that year, her unexplained emotional distance afterward, the way she had insisted on redecorating the house as if trying to erase something, the speed of her pregnancy announcement, things he had dismissed at the time as coincidence now aligned with terrifying precision. John did not shout. He did not storm upstairs. He did not confront her. John Okafor was not a man who reacted. He was a man who concluded. Carefully, he returned the photograph to the book, closed it, placed it exactly where he had found it, smoothed the documents, shut the drawer. When Lillian came downstairs minutes later, she found her husband seated calmly in the living room, reviewing a financial report on his tablet. He looked exactly the same, but everything about him had changed. That night, he did not eat the dinner she had prepared. He told the staff he had already eaten at work. He had not. Later, when Lillian entered their bedroom, she found the bed untouched on his side. John was gone. He had moved into the guest wing without a word. At first, she assumed it was stress, then business travel, then stubborn pride. But as days passed, patterns formed, patterns she could not ignore. John no longer accepted food from her hands. A private chef began arriving every morning. He no longer lingered near her. No casual touches, no goodnight kisses, no shared conversations beyond what was necessary. Even his eyes changed. Before, they had been warm, attentive, quietly affectionate. Now they were distant, watchful, measuring. In his culture, a man who suspected his wife of infidelity entered a state of ritual separation until truth was established. He must not eat her food.
He must not share her bed. He must cleanse himself spiritually. John followed those rules with frightening precision. The mansion, once filled with laughter, music, and Sophia's babbling joy, became heavy with tension. Staff whispered in corridors. Footsteps echoed too loudly. Even the chandeliers seemed to glow colder. Lillian tried everything. Soft apologies for imagined offenses, seductive gestures, sudden affection, tears. Nothing reached him. He treated her politely, but like a stranger. Weeks passed like this, a slow suffocation. Then one evening, John finally spoke. Not loudly, not cruelly, just with the finality of a judge delivering a sentence. "We will conduct a paternity test." The words dropped into the room like a stone into deep water. Lillian's face drained of color so quickly it was as if life itself had been unplugged from her body. Sophia, playing on the rug between them, laughed innocently, unaware that her world had just been set on fire. Lillian's lips trembled. "John, why would you say that?" He held her gaze steadily. No anger, no emotion, just certainty. "I require truth," he said. Nothing more, nothing less. In that moment, Lillian understood something terrifying. Her husband was no longer asking. He already believed the worst. And worse still, he would not stop until he proved it. Her mind raced, not toward defense, not toward denial, but towards survival. Because she knew something John did not. The test would not restore their marriage. It would destroy it. Her daughter's future, her status, her security. Everything. That night, long after the house fell silent, Lillian sat alone in the darkness, trembling, her phone clutched in her hand. She dialed the one person who would understand. Her mother. When the call connected, her voice broke into a whisper filled with terror. "Mother, he wants a paternity test." There was a long silence on the other end, then a slow, dangerous exhale, and words that would set tragedy into motion. "Then your husband must never live to see the result." Upstairs, unaware of the storm gathering around him, John stood by the window in the guest wing, staring into the darkness beyond his estate walls. His reflection looked like that of a man carved from stone. But deep inside, something bled quietly, not because of betrayal proven, but because of love dying, inch by inch, without mercy. The doubt had entered his house, and doubt, once invited in, never leaves alone. Lillian did not sleep that night. She lay in the vast, lonely bed that had once symbolized triumph. A billionaire husband, a mansion that dwarfed embassies, closets filled with couture flown in from Paris, jewelry that required security clearance to transport. Now it felt like a stage set for a life already collapsing behind the curtains. Every tick of the clock sounded like a countdown. Paternity test. 2 words capable of detonating everything she had built. By dawn, fear had hardened into decision. She dressed before sunrise, choosing a conservative outfit. Not the glamorous gowns John had once adored, but something subdued, almost humble. She avoided the main staircase, slipping out through the side entrance like a fugitive in her own home. Her driver asked no questions. He had learned long ago that Madam's family affairs existed in a realm where curiosity was dangerous. An hour later, the car rolled into the compound of her mother's residence, an older but still imposing estate that radiated the authority of old money and older secrets. Madame Beatrice received her in the private lounge. The older woman sat upright in a carved wooden chair, like a queen holding court, wrapped in expensive lace, her head tie sculpted into a towering crown. A cup of untouched tea rested beside her. She had already been awake for hours. Her eyes sharpened when she saw Lillian's face. No greeting, no embrace, just assessment. "What has happened?" Lillian's composure shattered. "Mother, he knows. He found something. He wants a paternity test." Silence flooded the room. Not shocked silence, calculating silence. Madame Beatrice did not gasp. She did not curse. She did not ask foolish questions. She leaned back slowly, fingers tapping once against the armrest, eyes half closed, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Then she spoke, calm, measured, lethal. "If he discovers the child isn't his, we lose everything." The words landed with the weight of a death sentence. Lillian's throat tightened. Maybe we can still explain."
"Explain what?" her mother snapped, eyes flashing open. "Adultery? Fraud? Deception of a man whose pride is larger than this city?" Lillian fell silent. They both knew John Okafor was not merely a husband. He was an empire. A man who valued honor more than comfort. A man raised in traditions where betrayal was not forgiven. It was erased. Madame Beatrice continued, her voice lower now, colder. Divorce will be the least of your problems. He will strip you of everything. Your houses, your accounts, your reputation. You will become a cautionary tale whispered in drawing rooms. She leaned forward. And that child will inherit nothing. Lillian's hands trembled violently. Sophia's face flashed in her mind, her laughter, her tiny fingers clutching at her dresses, her innocent trust. Panic surged. "What do we do?" she whispered. Madame Beatrice did not hesitate. "Your husband must die." The air seemed to freeze. Lillian stared at her mother, horror warring with desperate relief. "Mother, it is the only way," Madame Beatrice said flatly. "A widow commands sympathy. A disgraced wife commands nothing." She began listing the realities like items on a ledger. If he dies before the test, you inherit as his lawful spouse. The child remains his heir. The scandal dies with him. Her gaze sharpened. But it cannot be traced to you. Lillian swallowed hard. Poison? Madame Beatrice shook her head immediately. He no longer eats your food. Sleeping pills? He does not sleep beside you. An accident at home? Too suspicious, and he trusts no one now. Every possibility collapsed under the weight of John's caution, because John Okafor had already begun protecting himself. Madame Beatrice fell silent again, thinking. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, predatorily. "Tell me his routine." Lillian described it in detail. His early rising, his private gym session, his brief breakfast prepared by the chef, his solitary drive to work at exactly 7:30 a.m. No convoy, no driver. John preferred control. And his route? A construction corridor along the eastern bypass, very quiet in the morning. Madame Beatrice's smile deepened. Perfect. An isolated road, limited witnesses, easy escape routes through unfinished side streets. It will look like armed robbery, she said. Nigeria devours rich men every day. No one will question it. Lillian felt both nauseated and strangely calm, as if she had stepped outside herself. How? I know people, her mother replied simply. And she did. By afternoon, discreet calls had been made, numbers dialed from phones that could not be traced, voices lowered to murmurs, names never spoken aloud. Professional killers did not ask questions. They asked for payment. Motorcycles were arranged, fast, maneuverable, anonymous. Weapons without serial numbers. Spotters positioned at entry points to confirm John's departure. Escape routes mapped through alleys and abandoned sites. Everything precise. Everything deniable. All they had to do was wait. The night before the operation, Lillian returned home. She moved through the mansion like an actress performing her final scene, touching objects absently. The piano John had bought for her birthday. The staircase where he once carried her laughing in his arms. The nursery where Sophia slept peacefully, thumb in mouth. For a moment, Doubt stabbed through her. Could she really do this? But then she imagined the DNA result, John's cold eyes, the divorce proceedings, the headlines, the humiliation. Her resolve hardened again. Survival demanded cruelty. Morning came clear and bright, as if the universe itself refused to acknowledge what was about to happen. John emerged from the guest wing dressed in a charcoal suit, tie perfectly knotted, shoes gleaming. He looked composed, powerful, untouchable. Lillian's heart pounded so loudly she feared he might hear it. This was the last time she would see him alive. He walked past her toward the door without pausing. Desperation pushed her forward. "John!" He stopped, slowly turned. His expression was polite, distant. She stepped closer, forcing a fragile smile, leaning up to kiss his cheek. Her lips trembled against his skin. "Drive safely, darling." For a fraction of a second, she hoped he might soften, might say something kind, might become the man she had once known. But John Okafor did not respond. Not with words, not with touch. He simply looked at her, long enough to make her feel exposed, as if he could see every secret crawling beneath her skin. Then he turned and walked away. The front door closed with a quiet finality that echoed through the mansion like a coffin lid sealing shut. Outside, engines were already humming in distant, hidden positions. Eyes watched from unfinished buildings, fingers tightened on triggers, helmets concealed faces. Death waited patiently along the road ahead.
Inside the house, Lillian stood frozen in the hallway, one hand still hovering in the air where she had tried to hold on to something already gone. Upstairs, Sophia laughed in her crib, unaware that her future balanced on the edge of a gun barrel miles away. And far down the quiet construction corridor, men on motorcycles adjusted their gloves, checked their weapons, and stared at the empty road where a billionaire would soon appear. All according to plan, all perfectly timed, all irreversible, or so they believed. Morning sunlight spilled across the Okafor estate like molten gold, bathing the manicured lawns and marble fountains in deceptive serenity. Birds skimmed the hedges, sprinklers whispered across imported grass. To any outsider, it was a picture of order, wealth, and peace. But beneath that polished surface, death was already moving into position. John Okafor stepped out of the front doors precisely at 7:28 a.m. He moved with the controlled efficiency of a man whose life operated on discipline, not emotion. His suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable, his mind already turning through the day's negotiations and decisions. Two security officers fell in behind him at a respectful distance. Another scanned the perimeter from the gatehouse. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. His armored SUV waited at the foot of the steps, engine idling softly like a restrained beast. The driver's door was already open. John preferred to drive himself, even with protection. He descended the steps. 1, 2, 3. Then something moved. Not from the driveway, not from the house, from the shadows near the gate. A blur of torn fabric and bare limbs. Before anyone could process what was happening, a small figure sprinted forward with shocking speed. A girl, filthy, thin, wild-haired. Security shouted, "Stop! Stop there!" Too late. She dropped to her knees beside the front tire, arm flashing in a swift, brutal motion. Slash! The sound exploded through the quiet morning. A violent hiss as compressed air burst free, the tire collapsing inward with a sickening shudder. Everyone froze. For a fraction of a second, even time seemed stunned. Then chaos erupted. Security lunged forward, tackling the girl to the ground, wrenching the crude knife from her hand. One guard twisted her arms behind her back with unnecessary force. "What are you doing?" he barked. John didn't move at first. He simply stared at the ruined tire, at the audacity, at the interruption of his controlled world. Then the fury came. Cold, blinding, terrifying. He strode toward her, every step deliberate, radiating a power that made even his guards shift uneasily. "What?" he said, voice low but shaking with restrained rage, "is wrong with you?" The girl was forced onto her knees. Up close, she looked even worse. Dust ground into her skin, feet cracked and bleeding, dress hanging in strips. She smelled of the streets, of hunger, of abandonment. But her face was calm. Not defiant, not afraid. Calm in a way that did not belong to a child facing armed men and a furious billionaire. She lifted her eyes to his, and John felt something unexpected flicker through him. Recognition? No, something deeper, something ancient. Then she spoke, softly, urgently. "Don't go today." The words sliced through his anger with surgical precision. "Someone close to you wants your blood because you asked for truth." John stiffened. The sentence did not sound like a beggar's rambling. It sounded intentional. His eyes narrowed. "Who sent you?" She shook her head slowly, strands of tangled hair falling across her face. "No one sent me." Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet every person present heard it clearly. "The road ahead is death. Men are waiting for you." A guard scoffed. "Sir, she's mad." John raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. His heartbeat slowed, not from fear, but from calculation. He had survived too long in ruthless industries to dismiss specific warnings as coincidence. He studied her. "Which road?" She did not answer directly. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, eyes searching his face as if confirming something. Then she whispered words that shattered his composure completely. "You stopped eating her food 3 weeks ago." John's breath caught. "You sleep facing the window." A cold sensation crawled up his spine. "You still keep your father's red bead bracelet under your pillow." The world tilted. John staggered back a step, as if struck. No one knew that. No one. Not his staff, not his wife, not even his closest business allies. The bracelet had belonged to his father, given to him before his death, a private symbol of protection he had never spoken about to anyone. One of the guards loosened his grip unconsciously, staring at the girl with dawning unease. "Sir, how would she—" The girl's eyes softened, almost sorrowful. "The child you raise," she said gently, "was not conceived in your house." The words hit harder than any blow. For a moment, John could not breathe. Sophia's laughter flashed through his mind, her tiny hands, her innocent eyes. His chest tightened painfully. Before he could reach for the girl, before he could demand answers, before he could even form a coherent thought, she twisted suddenly, slipping from the guard's weakened hold with surprising agility. "Stop her!" someone shouted, but she was already moving. Bare feet slapping against pavement, she sprinted toward the gate, darted through a narrow opening before it could close, and vanished into the bustling street beyond. Guards rushed after her. Too late. It was as if the city had swallowed her whole. John stood rooted in place. For the first time in decades, John Okafor, the man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, who faced hostile takeovers like chess matches, looked shaken. Not because a tire had been slashed, not because a child had insulted him, but because she knew. Impossible things, private things, things buried deep within the walls of his life. His instincts, the same instincts that built his empire, suddenly roared to life. Check the route, now. He turned sharply to his head of security. Send a team ahead, full surveillance sweep immediately. Sir, about the vehicle, now. Within seconds, calls were being made. 2 SUVs peeled out of the compound, heading toward the Eastern Bypass construction corridor. The minutes that followed stretched into an eternity. John did not move. He did not speak. He simply stared at the deflated tire, mind racing through probabilities, scenarios, contingencies. Behind him, through the tall windows of the mansion, unseen eyes watched from an upper floor. Lillian, hands clasped tightly, heart pounding with anticipation. Everything should be happening right now. He should be on that road. Why was he still here? Then John's phone rang. His security chief answered first, listening, face draining of color. Slowly he lowered the phone and looked at John with something approaching disbelief. Sir? John's voice was steady, deadly calm. Report. There are armed men positioned along your usual route. Multiple motorcycles, high-caliber weapons. They were waiting for a vehicle matching yours. The words echoed hollowly in the morning air. For a moment, John did not react. Then the full weight of it crashed down. His knees nearly buckled, not from weakness, from the magnitude of betrayal. Someone had planned this. Someone who knew his routine. Someone close enough to predict his movements with precision. Someone who wanted him dead. The girl's voice whispered again in his mind. Someone close to you wants your blood. John lifted his gaze slowly toward the road beyond the gate where the child had disappeared. A chill spread through him, not fear of death, but awe, because a homeless girl with a knife had just saved his life, and he had no idea who or what she really was.
For the rest of that morning, John Okafor did not leave his compound. The sun climbed higher, burning away the soft innocence of dawn. But inside the estate, the atmosphere thickened into something heavy, metallic. The air of a place where truth was about to surface, whether anyone wanted it to or not. John stood alone in his private study, staring at the wall of glass that overlooked the city. From this height, Lagos looked small, manageable, conquerable. But betrayal did not come from cities. It came from inside the house. Behind him, the head of security finished relaying the field report. 4 men on 2 motorcycles, sir. Military-grade rifles. They had line of sight on the construction bend. If your vehicle had entered that corridor, there would have been no escape.
John closed his eyes briefly. Not in fear, in calculation. Were they apprehended? No, sir. They dispersed immediately when they spotted our advance team. Professionals? Of course they were. Amateurs did not plan operations this precise. John turned slowly. Trace everything. Communications, payments, surveillance footage along that route. I want names. Yes, sir. When the door closed, silence returned, thick and suffocating. And with it came a realization that cut deeper than the assassination attempt itself. Someone inside his circle had fed the killer's information. Someone who knew his exact departure time, his route, his habits, his lack of convoy. Someone close. The girl's words echoed again, relentless. Someone close to you wants your blood. Upstairs, Lillian paced her bedroom like a trapped animal. Why hadn't she heard anything? There should have been news by now. Police sirens, phone calls, confirmation. Instead, the house remained eerily normal. Staff moving quietly, birds chirping outside, the distant hum of traffic. Her phone lay on the bed, screen dark, mocking her. Finally it rang. Her heart leapt into her throat. She snatched it up, but the number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" she whispered. A low male voice responded. The target did not appear. Her stomach dropped. What do you mean he did not appear? He never left his compound. Ice flooded her veins. How is that possible? We don't know, but the area is compromised. We're disengaging. The call ended. Lillian stood frozen, the phone slipping from her fingers onto the carpet. No. No, no, no! Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. By afternoon, John had answers. Not complete, but enough. Shell accounts, encrypted transfers, disposable phones. But money always left footprints, no matter how carefully it was moved. And those footprints led to a name that made his chest tighten with a mixture of rage and grim inevitability. Madame Beatrice, his mother-in-law. John was not surprised, not truly. The woman had always looked at him not as a son, but as an asset, a vault that happened to breathe. But suspicion was not proof. He needed certainty. So he did something even his enemies rarely anticipated. He remained silent. He did not confront. He did not accuse. Instead, he ordered a discreet DNA test, samples collected without Lillian's knowledge, processed through a private international lab beyond local influence. 48 hours later, the results arrived. John sat alone when he opened the file. His hands were steady, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes scanned the conclusion, something inside him collapsed inward like a star dying. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Sophia was not his child. For a long time he did not move. Memories surged uninvited. Her first steps toward him, her tiny voice calling him Daddy. The nights he had carried her when she cried, the toys scattered across his study floor because she insisted on being near him. None of that was false. But the foundation beneath it had been, built on deception, built on another man's shadow. Pain rose in his chest, sharp and suffocating, not because of biology, because of betrayal. That evening he summoned Lillian. She entered his study with forced composure,
though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She searched his face for clues, for mercy, for anything. She found nothing. John placed the document on the desk between them. "Explain." She glanced down, and the world ended. Her knees buckled, catching the edge of the chair to remain standing. Tears burst from her eyes before she could stop them. "John, Is she mine?" The question was quiet, deadly, final. Lillian's defenses crumbled. "No." The word came out as a broken whisper. Everything after that spilled out in a torrent. The affair with an ex-lover she had never fully let go, the pregnancy panic, her mother's insistence that marrying John would secure their future, the desperate gamble that he would never question the timing. "And the attack?" John asked. Her sobbing intensified. "My mother, she said it was the only way."
"I didn't want. Did you try to stop it?" Silence answered him. That was enough. Something in John's eyes went completely cold. Not explosive anger, not shouting, just the quiet extinction of feeling. He pressed a button on his desk. The door opened immediately. Police officers stepped in. Lillian's cries turned to screams.
"John, please, don't do this. Think of Sophia. She knows you as her father."
For the first time, pain flickered across his face, but it did not soften him. "Take her," he said. As they led her away, her voice echoed down the hallway, begging, pleading, breaking. Upstairs, Sophia began crying too, as if sensing the fracture tearing through her world. John remained seated long after the house fell silent. Madame Beatrice was arrested the following day at the airport while attempting to flee the country. The news exploded across media outlets. Billionaire assassination plot, family betrayal, hidden paternity scandal. But John ignored it all. Public opinion meant nothing now. Only one mystery remained: the girl. He deployed teams across the city, checking shelters, street communities, CCTV footage, hospital records. Nothing. No trace. It was as if she had never existed. Weeks later, stopped at a traffic light, John saw her. Standing barefoot between cars, selling sachets of water. His heart slammed against his ribs. He stepped out of the vehicle before his security could stop him. Up close, she looked exactly the same. Thin, dusty, impossibly calm. This time, she didn't run. She simply looked up at him with those ancient eyes. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice rough. She studied him quietly, then smiled, a soft, knowing smile far too old for her face. "Someone your mother prayed for before she died." The words struck him like lightning. His mother, gone for decades, a woman who had spent years barren before his miraculous birth. Before he could speak, she reached into her dress and placed something in his palm. A small pendant, tarnished silver. His breath stopped. It was his mother's, buried with her in the grave. He looked up, shaken to his core. "How did you?" But she was already stepping back into the crowd. "You were meant to live," she said gently. Then she turned and disappeared into the moving sea of humanity. Security searched frantically. Nothing. Gone. John stood in the middle of the road, traffic honking around him, staring at the pendant glinting in his hand. For the first time since childhood, tears blurred his vision. Because a homeless girl with a knife had not just saved his life. she had given it back to him. And some mysteries were never meant to be solved.
Enjoyed this tale? The story isn't over. If you want part 2, comment part 2 below. Also like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping tales.